Hey guys, welcome back. My name is Cade Bonsall, and this is going to be my ranking for all the live action Batman movies. And today I'm actually joined by my dad, Rich Bonsall. So this is also going to be our discussion and debate as we really analyze each film and talk about our pros and cons. And as we go through my ranking, we're also going to be talking about where he ranks each film as well. We are both massive Batman fans, and we both have a lot to say about these movies. So we're going to be splitting this into multiple parts as we go through it and because we have 11 movies to go through. So if you want to listen to the rest of our ranking, feel free to go check it out on the channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And yeah, let's get started. So, hey, Dad.
What's up?
Hey, so Batman. Again, we are both huge fans of this character. And when it comes to the movies, the live action ones specifically, there are a couple of ones that we absolutely love. There are ones that we like, and there are ones that we're, I'd say, not too fond of. So yeah, I figured we could go through this and rank them. So let's see. We have 11 movies to go through. We're going to go through it from least favorite to favorite. So first up on my list, number 11, my least favorite Batman movie would have to be Batman and Robin from 1997. And this is actually not your number 11 on the list. This is your number 10, actually. And we'll get into your number 11 after, your least favorite. So Batman and Robin from 1997. From what I remember, you did go see this movie in the theater when it came out. Obviously, I didn't because I wasn't alive yet. But from what you've told me before, this movie really lost you the minute you saw the opening credits, right?
Why? Because the opening credit was that we are talking about the Arnold Schwarzenegger one.
Yes, we are.
Yeah, it was basically, hi, this is a Batman movie, and Arnold Schwarzenegger in big huge letters all across the screen opens the movie. It's like, hi, welcome to Batman, not starring Batman.
Yeah, well, to be fair, Dad, just to be fair, Batman 1989 had Jack Nicholson's voice before Michael Keaton's.
So
Yeah, so I get it. Yeah, so I will say this, Batman and Robin, it might be one of the worst films ever made, and it's probably the worst Batman movie ever made, in my opinion. And yeah, I might have enjoyed this movie when I was little, but over time I've kind of come to see how, what this movie got wrong. But here's my first question for you.
besides everything,
Besides everything. Yeah, that's funny. I will ask you this though. So when you look back at this movie, because I've seen this question online a couple times, but I just wanted to ask you first just to get your response. So looking back at Batman and Robin and just how it is as a movie, how faithful is this movie to the Batman comics?
0%.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I mean, short of the characters.
Yeah, that part I will agree with, but yeah, it doesn't feel too faithful to the comics in that way. It doesn't really represent Batman's mythology too well, so that's probably one of my biggest issues. Now,
It
I will
was a
say,
comedic joke.
it did feel kind of like a joke at sometimes. It felt more like a parody, even though I'm probably sure it wasn't, I'm sure it probably wasn't trying to be, but it is what it is. But I think one of the biggest issues with this movie would probably have to be the villains of the film because well think about this, we got Mr. Freeze, we got Poison Ivy, and we got Bane. Would you say that that's too many villains, or do you think it was better because of the fact that they were all a team?
That was okay because they were a team. Because even in the 1966 Batman series, the original movie, they had all the bad guys teaming up against Batman. They joined together to be like a super league. So you're like, okay, we can see, hey, you can't, Poison Ivy was like, you can't do this on your own. I'll help, even though she was, doing her thing.
Yeah, well, that's another thing because a lot of people have said over time that Mr. Freeze and Poison Ivy teaming up didn't really make a lot of sense because ultimately they had two completely different goals. We have Mr. Freeze deciding that he eventually wants to, freeze the world, and Poison Ivy wants to cover it with plants. And people have pointed out, those are two very incompatible plans. Wouldn't it have made more sense for them to be against each other? And I actually think that would have been cool if they were against each other in the movie instead.
Or, dueling factions trying to get their way.
Yeah, I guess that is a good point. But yeah, I mean, the villains, the way they're portrayed, though, I don't think is that great because if you look at Mr. Freeze as a character, he's supposed to be a more tragic and sympathetic villain. And he's probably one of the better portrayals of a sympathetic villain with a tragic backstory. But I can't really sympathize with a villain like Mr. Freeze in this movie because he's just treated like a joke. And that's because he just constantly makes all these ice puns, you know?
They're horrible.
Yeah, they are.
They're horrible. And even Poison Ivy was doing all her little plant puns through the whole thing. It was I don't know if it was if they were trying to purposely be punny and funny, but it just wasn't. It just wasn't. It was awful. The day glow lights everywhere, the horrible bat suit. It was just awful.
Yeah, I get what you mean. Yeah, and also the way that they portrayed Bane in this movie, I don't think was done very well because, they portrayed Bane. I get what they were trying to go for, but they portrayed him as this mindless brute working for Poison Ivy, whereas in the comics, Bane is a lot more intelligent and he's a lot more like a kind of a mastermind. He's not just muscle, he's also brain. So I didn't like how he was portrayed in this movie all that well.
Yeah, his character was really underutilized. I mean, Bane was supposed to, in the comics, is kind of a criminal mastermind,
Yeah, he is.
and they made him just a dumb brute in this, which was kind of a waste of a character.
Yeah, it was. And aside from the villains, another thing that I also don't like about this movie would have to be the relationship of Batman and Robin in this movie. Because, I mean, I actually, from the comics, I do like Batman and Robin, specifically Dick Grayson, like it is in the movie. But the problem here is that in the movie, all that they do throughout most of the movie is just bicker. They spend the whole movie bickering with each other about trust, and eventually, they get affected by Poison Ivy's hypnotism, and they just bicker over who Poison Ivy wants more, and it's just not done very well in the movie at all.
And it's one of those things again. Was it on purpose? Was it not? It just seemed. And the horrible part about it is most of the people in it were good actors,
Yes, they are.
but they were put in a like impossible position because this script was a pile of garbage.
Yeah, I'll have to agree with you with that. Also, I will say this: I do think that I get that they were trying to include Batgirl in this movie to sort of build the Bat family, and I think it's kind of sad that this is the only live action version of Batgirl that we've had, like in the cinemas at least. But I don't really like this portrayal of Batgirl because, well, for one, it's not Barbara Gordon, it's not Commissioner Gordon's daughter, it's Alfred's niece, and that's another thing. But also, overall, I just thought her character in this film was kind of unnecessary.
You say unnecessary, I say unneeded. Just it was kind of contrived. You know, there was just too much there. You didn't need it.
Yeah, yeah, that is pretty much one way of looking at it. So yeah, I'll have to agree. But I will say for Batman Robin, it is my least favorite. I don't really have a lot of good things to say about it, but I will say that I think the only good thing about this movie is honestly Alfred. I think his actor, I think that he was still one of the better actors who played Alfred, and he still managed to bring that sort of life that Alfred has to the movie. And yeah, he's probably my favorite thing about it, to be honest.
Yep, and like I mean, if you put the mute on and look at George Clooney, he's how Bruce Wayne's supposed to look.
Yeah, he is.
If you leave the mute button on and you don't listen to him talk and any of the garbage and the what this was the nipply bat suit, right?
Yep, this and Batman Forever.
Yeah, so that those parts were awful. But I mean, it's I don't know. There's not a nice way to say it. It was just the most awful movie.
Yeah, I will have to agree with you on that. All right, yeah, so that's my least favorite. That's number 11. So now we're moving on to number 10 on the list, and that for me would have to be Batman Forever. And this is where it's funny because this is actually your number 11, your least favorite Batman movie. Well, I could be wrong though. Is this your least favorite Batman movie, Batman Forever?
Val Kilmer Batman,
Yes.
awful.
Why?
This is
Why? Explain to me why.
first of all, you can't have blonde hair, blue eyed Batman. Sorry, doesn't work.
Oh yeah.
Does not work. It just does not work. Never mind the same thing. This movie was like a joke and a farce, and they try. It just seemed like they were taking characters that are dark and dreary and brooding characters and turning them into this bad comedy. Because also the bad guys in this were Tommy Lee Jones and Jim
Jim
Carrey,
Carrey.
right?
Yep, Two-Face and Riddler, that's right.
Yeah, I mean, Two Face was like a joke. He's more of a serious character in my eyes.
Yes,
Riddler, Carrey, he took it a little too far, but he was funny. and he was almost the saving grace of the movie.
Yeah, I have to agree with you on that. I will say that I think my favorite thing about this movie is probably Jim Carrey. Like, if you look at the performances, I think Jim Carrey is kind of the standout. It feels like he really carries the movie because he still he's is a good actor overall, and he still brings that type of performance. So I think as a villain performance, I thought it was good, but as a Riddler performance, I don't think it was that strong.
I and see that's where I disagree. I think it was a very good ode to '60s Riddler.
Okay, I see what you mean by that, like with Frank Gorshin.
Yes, Frank Gorshin, Joker. I mean, excuse me, Riddler. It is because he's funny. He's but all of the stuff with him getting electrocuted and all that stuff, the storyline was just awful.
Well, and I will say this, we're relating back to what you were saying earlier. So I think that with Riddler and Two-Face as villains, I do like those characters in the comics as villains, but I think the biggest problem with this movie is how they were portrayed because they don't really feel like Riddler and Two-Face all that much. They really feel like Joker ripoffs in a way.
They're definitely a couple of clowns.
Yeah, I will say that. But also circling back to Val Kilmer, I do think that yeah, this might not be my least favorite Batman movie, but I think Val Kilmer might be my least favorite Batman. And don't get me wrong, I think Val Kilmer's a good actor and all, but personally, I just don't think he brings a lot to the role of Bruce Wayne or Batman. I just didn't really every time I look back at this movie, I just don't really buy him as Batman or Bruce Wayne.
I don't think I could ever watch this movie again.
Really?
I don't think I could make it through. It's that awful.
Wow. Yeah, it is pretty bad, but another thing that I will say, another like issue that I have with this movie, that would have to be it would have to relate to Robin because here's the thing about Robin. So Chris O'Donnell overall, I still think is a good actor, but the biggest problem with Robin in this movie is the fact that he's an adult. And I know they made him an adult to make it more believable that he could go fight crime, but one of the things about Batman and Robin's relationship, specifically Dick Grayson as Robin, is that he was able to bond with Dick Grayson because of the fact that he lost his parents when he was a child. And I think making him an adult in this movie really took that, special element away from their relationship.
Well, I don't think that that's the problem. The problem is that Chris O'Donnell was an adult playing someone who was supposed to be younger. I
Right.
think I think they wanted the character to actually be younger, but the fact that they cast him, that's the problem. Is it was bad casting. They should have casted someone who was like 13 instead of someone who was 20, trying to be a 16-year-old or whatever. You know what I mean? It's like that's where they missed. They really missed on that. Is that yeah, like you said, they cast an adult to play a kid. Like a lot of times, because even if in TV today, you'll see a bunch of 30-year-olds playing kids in high school.
Yes, absolutely.
So I think that's what happened here is they just cast someone that was just too old for the part, just because he had a name. Because at the time he was yeah, I would say he was a semi-famous actor at the time. Again, they brought in a cast that was well-known actors. It was just the script was a pile of hot garbage, the um and the writing was just awful. The cinematography was awful. I mean, it was just. I mean, if it wasn't for Jim Carrey, kind of being the glue that kind of held that pile together, there's really nothing left. I mean, Tommy Lee Jones, great historic actor,
Yes.
playing a friggin' clown. Two Face is not a clown.
He is not a clown. And yeah, that's why I like Aaron Eckhart's performance so much better, but we'll get into that later. But yeah, it doesn't
Mhm.
represent them very well. Another issue I have with this movie would have to be Nicole Kidman's character of Chase Meridian. And here's why. So for me personally, when I look back at all the Batman films, one thing that I think a lot of the movies have kind of struggled with would have to be love interests because I look back and a lot of Batman's like relationships with the women, like in the first one he had Vicky Vale, the second one he had Catwoman, this one he had Chase Meridian, and so on with all the other films. And I just didn't like her relationship with Bruce Wayne. I didn't really buy their romance, and I didn't think her character was all that interesting, to be honest.
Because the acting was terrible.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from that, but do you get what I kind of mean though?
Oh, totally, totally. And the problem is when you're doing that movie as well, It's hard to the movies already are so long that it's so hard to do character development because so much of the rest of the movie is tied up with our hero the Bat going after all the villains. And then when you have multiple villains, they take up so much time in the film that you struggle with developing of the love interest, especially because everybody knows who Two-Face is. Everybody knows who Riddler is. Everyone knows who Batman is. Nobody really cares who the love interest is. And you really don't have the time to develop it. It's regardless of the movie, the character is always the development is always so thin because you can't do anything with it. There's no time.
Right. And that's where I don't think every Batman movie has suffered from this, but I think a lot of them have. But you know what? Whatever. Another thing, last thing that I want to talk about with this movie. So personally, I don't think this movie works well as feeling like a sequel to Tim Burton's first two films because both of his movies were so dark and gothic, and then you make this transition to this type of film. And I get that they wanted to go with a lighter approach, but they made it too different from Tim Burton's movies. Even if they tried to make it lighter, it just doesn't feel like it's part of the same continuity at all.
No, if they were supposed to be part of the same, universe or whatever you want to call it, it definitely wasn't right. Because who directed this? Was that Danny Elfman in this one?
The director of Batman Forever and Batman and Robin was Joel Schumacher.
Oh, Schumacher. Okay, yeah, okay. But it was like this was like a clown show, and it really didn't need to be.
Yeah, I see what you mean. But yeah, so I think that's where we'll end our Batman Forever discussion. So next up on my list, number 9 is probably Batman 1966. And this is actually your number 7. Now, I just want to say I might have this low on the list, but I actually do really like this movie, and I know you do too.
It's fun because it harkens back to when I was a kid. I mean, this came out before I was born, but when I was a kid, every summer when you were out of school and you were on vacation,
Right.
every summer on TV, this movie ran at least twice a week. And you always got to see, Batman and you got everything in it because it was long enough. You had all the characters. You got to vote for everybody. You knew what it was. And because when you harken back to it, you had the TV show on top of the movie. So you had I don't even know how many episodes of that Batman series there were.
I think it was like 3 or 4 seasons. I don't remember how many, but it was at least that long, I think.
Yeah, but there were probably 15 and 20 episode seasons as well.
Right.
So, not like now where a season's probably 12 episodes for something. So when you watch that, it was like you harkened back to the movie, but then you went and you saw the episodes where you saw the characters over and over again. You saw the Joker, you saw Cesar Romero playing the Joker, you saw the 3 different Catwomen. You got to see, between Lee Merriweather, Eartha Kitt, and Julie Newmar all play Catwoman through all of it. You got to see Gorshin. You got to see Burgess Meredith, who was one of the greatest actors ever, which is crazy because that man was a phenomenal stage actor and a movie actor, and he played the joke penguin on that show, and he was phenomenal.
Yeah, he was.
All the characters from that, and I think when you harken back to that because of the TV show, it actually makes the movie better because you get all the background in the characters. You
Right.
see them over and over again, and it's what makes it endearing.
Yeah, and I will say this. So I do think that, yeah, again, I might have it low, but I still really enjoy this movie because I get that overall it is kind of ridiculous, but it's ridiculous in a good way. And you know what? It actually does campiness a lot better than the other two movies we just discussed. Why do you think that is?
Because the 60s were campy.
Yes.
The bright colors, the fun, the biff, the boff, the oof, all that kind of stuff. It was that plus you have the best Batmobile of all the franchises.
Yeah, I know how much you love that Batmobile.
That Batmobile is probably the coolest one that's not a battle tank and it's not something, it's just a car
Right.
that's just crazy cool.
It is very cool.
And in that movie, you got to see, like a lot of the late model ones, you get one thing. You either get the car or you get the bike or you get whatever. In that movie, you got the Batboat, you got the Batmobile, and you got the Batcycle.
And you got the Batcopter too.
And the copter. I forgot about the copter. All in one movie. You know, you got to see all of that stuff, and it was fun. And to the bat poles, Robin, you know, all that stuff was funny. It was campy, like you said, but it was like endearing, and it was a sign of the times.
Yeah, it was. And I will say this. I think that I know a lot of people might think the lines are cheesy and whatnot, but that's the point. I actually do like all of Robin's one-liners, like "Holy something Batman," "Holy donuts Batman," "Holy cheese Batman," "Holy whatever Batman." It's actually fun to see that happen.
Holy small kittens, Batman. You know, it's just whatever,
Yeah,
and it's what made it fun. You know, that was fun on purpose. This wasn't dark, dreary Gotham City. This was the '60s. It was fun. It was the, you know, the bat suit was funny. It was tights. You know, he had eyebrows painted onto the cowl. You know what I mean? It was funny.
yeah, it was funny. And yeah, I do. That's why I do like it. And I will say that I think Adam West overall, I think he still gives a good performance as Batman slash Bruce Wayne, especially for what type of genre they're trying to portray this with.
You know why?
What?
Because he's deadpan the whole time. Everybody else is joking around him.
Yes.
That's what makes it. He is totally deadpan. He never breaks character. He never laughs, except for that one time when he was doing the little thing with the little triangles over his eyes when he was doing the little dance when he was drugged up, I think.
Yes.
Other
Yep.
than that, he's deadpan and everybody else is freaking out. And he's like, okay, Robin, you know, and everything he says, he's totally deadpan. That's what makes it even funnier because everybody else is, you know, like Caesar Romero when he's flamboyant in his character, Gorshin flamboyant in his character, Burgess Meredith flamboyant in his character, just meaning that they're waving their hands, they're talking loud, and you've got the bat poles, Robin, you know, and he's deadpan the whole time. That's what makes him so it's what makes it funny.
Right. And I will say this, and yeah, we talked about this a little earlier, but yeah, this movie actually does manage to use a lot of villains in one movie without making it seem too overcrowded. And again, it's because of the fact that they're all one team, and I think this is something that a lot of other superhero films, well, maybe not a lot, but some have kind of suffered from where you have too many villains. And a lot of the reasons why it didn't work out is because they all had their own personal agendas and didn't connect really well with each other. Well, I mean, they can have their own personal agendas as long as they're all connected by one big thing. And in this, they were because they all teamed up to take down Batman and Robin and exact their plan. And yeah, it's done really well, actually.
But you also didn't have to do you didn't have to do a backstory of all the characters
Right.
because you had a TV show afterwards that did all the backstory. So you really didn't need it. Whereas now they're all trying to get into, you know, why is this character like what? What happened to them to be this? You didn't need it. So it kept the movie short too. That's the other thing is that movie, I don't think that movie's 2 hours long.
I don't think it is, no.
No, whereas now a movie's 3.5 hours long. I mean, it's just, you know, you kind of you start losing your focus at, you know, when you're sitting in a movie for that long.
Yeah, I know it. I know runtime is kind of a big deal with you.
Yeah, because I mean, at the end, you just start losing your focus. You're like, all right, I've been here for 3 hours. What else are we doing today?
Okay, yeah, okay, I see what you mean. All right, well, I guess that's where we'll end our discussion for Batman 1966. Why don't we move on to the next one? Now we have next on my list is number 8. That is Batman and versus Superman: Dawn of Justice from 2016. And this is my number 8, and it's actually your number 4. And I know that you like this movie, and I do too. Again, I might have this low on my list, but I still do really like this movie. Now, first thing I want to talk about, do you remember what our reaction was when we first heard that Ben Affleck was going to play Batman?
No, but you know that I was more a fan of it than you were.
Well, I kind of do agree with that. Yeah, I was just thinking, I don't really know if I can picture that just because of how, or remember, the last superhero movie he had done was Daredevil, and we both remember that movie. And I think that just knowing that he was going to play Batman, I thought he still looked the part, but I just wasn't sure if I could buy him as both Bruce Wayne and Batman. But what I remember us doing was right after we heard about that, we watched his movie with Justin Timberlake, which was Runner Runner. And after we saw that movie, we were talking for a while, thinking, you know what? Maybe he could be Bruce Wayne, right?
Yes, yes. And it like I said, if you and you know we've said this privately, if you closed your eyes and used your imagination and someone described how Batman and Bruce Wayne are supposed to look, you would be like, it's Ben Affleck.
Yeah,
You'd open your eyes and go, yep, that's Affleck. Or if you put them all in a lineup, take every guy that's ever played Batman and put him in a lineup and said, all right, which one's Batman? You'd point at Affleck. You just would. You just would.
yeah, you probably would. And, I will say this, I do think that Ben Affleck's Batman is kind of underrated. I really do like what he did with the character, and I liked him in each movie that he was in. And actually, again, I don't know if I would say I don't know if he's my favorite Batman. He's probably top three though, but I think that he might actually be your favorite Batman, right?
From the strictly from the how how a comic or any description that you would ever think that would be Batman, it would be Ben. It's because he's 6'4". He's a big guy. He's imposing, and he looks the part. You can't have a dude that's 5'9", in a suit. He's not going to be imposing the way a big guy is. He absolutely looks the part.
Well, not just looks the part, but I think that for what he was playing, I think he actually played it really well. Because remember, it's not supposed to be a much younger Batman. It's a Batman 20 years into his career. And I thought that
Yes,
he played a wiser and more experienced Batman very well, actually.
he did. He looked the part though. He and for the character, the time, he just he was perfect for what they did with the movie as
Yes.
far as the development of the character. The I felt like they finally got him aged right for the time of Batman.
Like how he was 20 years in.
Yeah, Batman should be in his early to mid 40s. Affleck is like 45.
Yeah, at the time that he made it. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, you know, he was like 45. It was like they nailed it. It was like when you're looking at it, you're going, okay, we need a guy in his mid 40s who can pull this off, can look the part, can physically do the part as well. Because there's the other piece of the puzzle is it's a demanding role physically
Yeah, it is.
to be able to go in and be able to fight, hold a gun, look imposing, being able to pull it off.
Yeah, and well, I think that that's one of the most compelling things about Batman as a character, and it's one of the things that I respect most about the actors who have played him. Ben Affleck, Christian Bale, Robert Pattinson, Michael Keaton, and everybody else. So the thing about Batman, when you for an actor who plays him, you don't really just play Batman; you play Bruce Wayne as well. So you're really playing two different characters in a way.
And he nailed both. He nailed both. In my mind, there's probably only two guys that have ever nailed both, and he's one of them.
Yeah, I will agree with you on that. I thought he was really good. Now, aside from Ben Affleck's portrayal of Batman and Batman versus Superman, one other thing that I actually do like about this movie is I actually do like the the conflict that he has with Superman in this movie. I know that when this movie was coming out, a lot of people thought, Batman versus Superman, it doesn't make sense. Superman would win. It would make no sense for them to fight. They're both heroes. But I actually, when I first heard about this movie, I thought it made perfect sense that they would have some kind of conflict with each other because Batman and Superman, despite the fact that they're both heroes, they are kind of two very different heroes if you compare them to each other, and they both have different views of how to, how to inflict justice. And I think that it made sense to me that they would fight.
Yeah, because look, if you looked at it from Bruce Wayne's standpoint, Superman is an alien that can rule the world anytime he felt like it.
Right.
That's the one sentence explanation of Bruce Wayne's view of Superman.
Right.
That anytime he wanted, he could burn the place down. Isn't that one of the lines he used? Or could
Yes.
burn it out or something like that. He could take it down. It's totally true. You've got a guy who he's like, what when does when does the wolf pop out of sheep's clothing? I think that's kind of what I think was Bruce's conflict with Superman.
Yes. And I will say I also liked how the film was also kind of inspired by The Dark Knight Returns, which for anyone who's listening, that's the comic where the older Bruce Wayne came out of retirement to protect Gotham again, and eventually he had a conflict with Superman. And I think that this movie was definitely inspired by The Dark Knight Returns, from what we've seen from the comic and the animated movie. But I really do like how it recreates that sort of, event from the comic.
It's probably one of the truest portrayals,
Yep.
as far as from the characters and the way the whole thing was just put together.
Yep.
Affleck was great. Henry Cavill, he's been an excellent Superman. Can't really complain about it.
He might be my favorite Superman, actually. I know Christopher Reeve's portrayal of Superman is iconic, but I actually like Henry Cavill a little bit more. I think he actually made Superman feel a little bit more
Relatable.
yeah, relatable and a little more human, actually.
Yes, because he just looks much more, even though he's like this, big kind of, again, another kind of big imposing guy, he looks approachable and relatable even as Superman.
Yeah, he does. Well, remember, Dad, though, the looks aren't everything with these characters.
No, but most people are visual. So when you think about it, you when you're developing it in your brain, when someone's explaining, like let's say you're writing something and you haven't pulled it all together yet, and you're trying to visually, put a vision to what you're writing.
Yep.
He just nails it. He's big, he's imposing, but he has that softness about him that makes him feel approachable as Superman. That's the kind of cool thing that I liked about the way they developed the character.
Oh, yeah, I agree
If that
completely.
makes any sense,
It does make sense, and I agree. But
because he has to be both. He has to be both.
yeah, he does. He absolutely does. And I think that, aside from Batman and Superman's, conflict in the movie and just how it was, I actually do like one thing that I think this movie has really well is I like the world building that this movie has, like for setting up the whole franchise, because we got to see Wonder Woman. We also got to see the tease of both Flash and Aquaman and also a cyborg as well, kind of. And I think that this does a great job, expanding the universe.
No, it definitely did. It definitely did that. I totally agree. It felt like some of it was kind of a little thrown in at the end kind of thing, but
Well, yeah,
I get where you're coming from.
well, yeah, and that's kind of where I'll get into my cons for this movie. So I do like this movie overall, but it does have its flaws if you look back at it. So I'm not saying that I think the plot for this movie is bad. I think it's good, but in terms of like the plot from beginning to end, I think it is kind of all over the place from times.
Yeah, I agree with that because again, there was too many characters.
Yeah, because if you look back, you have Batman and Superman, but you also have Wonder Woman, you have Lois Lane, you have Lex Luthor, you have Doomsday. You also have the, Easter eggs for both for Flash, for Cyborg, for Aquaman. It's because of the fact that they were trying to set up so much. And all in all, the plot just feels kind of jumbled from time to time.
Totally. I totally agree with you on that. It was all over the place. That was the problem, when you were watching it, you're looking and just going, dude, relax, man. There's just too much going on here. And I feel like they could have turned that alone, they could have made a trilogy out of. And it wouldn't have felt like too much.
Right. Well, I will say this, aside from the plot feeling a little too all over the place, I think another problem that I would have, and I think you feel the same way, was Jesse Eisenberg as Lex Luthor. Because, well, let me just say one thing first. So, Jesse Eisenberg as Lex Luthor, I didn't dislike his performance. I think as a villain, it was fine, but he just wasn't a convincing Lex Luthor, in my opinion.
Lex Luthor is a bright, brash, egotistical maniac.
Yes.
And Jesse Eisenberg played him like a weasel.
Oh, you think so?
Yes. He did. He got the smart part down.
Yeah, he did.
He got the slightly brash part down, but that was it. He just didn't get the rest. He came across as like a little whiny weasel.
Yeah,
That's my problem with the character. Is Lex Luthor is supposed to be again a super smart, bright, brash, man, and then you have this little weasel playing him, and he never came across as a convincing character for me. I guess that's my biggest issue with him is he was just not convincing as Lex Luthor.
yeah, that's where I agree with that because again, I as a villain performance, I thought it was fine, but just as Lex Luthor, I just didn't buy it all that much. But yeah, I guess that's where we'll end our conversation about Batman v Superman. Okay, I think that's also where we're going to end the first part of our ranking right now. And yeah, if you guys want to go check out the rest of it, go check it out on the channel. Again, don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you there. Bye.